Here we go. So welcome everyone. I'll run everyone through just the agenda really quickly. So we'll do a pretty fast open, which is designed to run us all through a bit of breathing, some grounding, just real simple breathwork practice that allows us to blow out some mental clutter and be present for our chat with Daniel. And then we'll jump into one of our plus 22 breakthrough experiences, which we've done this quite a few times now, and it was always fun to see, essentially when we give a bit of time and space for our minds to reflect on some powerful questions, how fast we can take the original number or how long we want to live to that original number in our head, and how we can quickly increase that to usually 15 additional years just by going through some of the practices around the whys, right? Like it's not just about living longer, it's about thriving and having, health span, joy span, all of that jazz. And what does that mean to our family? What does that mean to our legacy, our work, all of that kind of stuff. So we'll go through one of those practices, which we do with all of our forms, including the 6 and 12 month groups. And then from there, we have a very similar flow of reflective questions, almost like forced journaling by topic based on what's going on each month in those forms. But this is the starting point. And then we'll close it out and we'll do a bit of a checkout and share a little bit what's coming up on our side with some of the few forms in 2026. And hopefully everyone will leave feeling like they took their mind to the spa for about an hour and a half. That's the plan. So let's do it. All right. Who just sort of show of hands or with the chat, who here has done any kind of guided breathing in the past? Yeah, perfect. Perfect. The hands are going up, which is more and more every day, which is exciting. For those who haven't, and for those who have, this is a bit of a different breathwork sequence. It's a little bit faster, kind of an upregulated flow. There's an app called Othership that we use their tracks just so that then you can have access to that tool afterwards. So it's a little bit of a quicker breathing flow. You might feel a little bit of tingles in the arms or the hands on some of the holds. It's totally normal. We're oxygenating the body. There's a whole bunch of doctors actually on this call, so you can ask them what's happening. But from my understanding, there's a lot of anti-inflammatory properties when we do this kind of breathing. We're doing it though because it's the one I've noticed one of the quickest ways to just blow out, whatever you may be coming in with. We're all human. We all have things going on personally and professionally, and it's just a nice tool to reset quite quickly. So we'll jump into that. I'll do it with you. Feel free if you want, just for this period, to shut your cameras off and mute yourself so you can really breathe and move the body. But then afterwards, please do turn your cameras on so that we can see everyone. So just who can I still see?
Hello.
Mark,
Ready to get focused,
can
be
you hear this?
productive, and
I can
have an
see you.
awesome day? Let's do this thing. Starting
Burrell.
with in 4, out 4, nasal breath.
We're all good?
In 2, 1. In.
Perfect.
Out. In. Out. In. Out. In. Out. Double time, here we go. In. Out. In. Out. In. Out. In. Out. In. Get lost in this. Big breath in. Squeeze your hands into fists. Feel the power in your whole body. You're alive. Let's let it out with a big exhale right now. Holding on empty. Conjure up the power you have within you. Feel it. Let's breathe life into this again. 2 count breath. Here we go. In. Out. In. ready for a 1 count breath. In, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. Get lost in this. You got 30 more seconds. Give it your all. Getting ready for our final breath in. Take it in. Feel the power in your stomach. Feel the drive in your heart. Use this today. Let it out. Beautiful. You are incredible.
All right. Just flip your cameras back on. How's everyone feeling? Some thumbs up.
Great, great, great.
Yeah,
Great.
if you had to use one word, how would you describe how the mind's feeling right now?
Tuned in. That's 2 words.
That's all right. That's good. That's good.
Present.
Present. Yeah, amazing piece. Love it. Love it. I'm just always amazed that we don't often think about the breath, the thing that literally keeps us alive and that we're doing subconsciously and day in and day out. But then when it comes to, a practice like this that literally just took minutes, you can be in a completely different mental state almost instantly, right? So there's one thing to do it for something like what we're, for us to just kind of ground and check in as a group, but then you're all, doing some pretty interesting things out in this world. I mean, this is where you can take these practices like this and stack them to other areas of your life, whether that's, I don't know, maybe you have a presentation, a client meeting, or, something that you need to be really clear and present for. I mean, it literally takes minutes where you can blow out some of that mental clutter and come in present, which I'm biased given the work that I do, but and what we do here at Beusail. But I mean, I think presence is the superpower moving forward, given the chaotic world that we often live in and the amount of, speed and content and just things that are going really quickly. So yeah, okay, let's jump in. We've got Daniel here, and oh shoot, I'm realizing I'm missing a T in your name. My apologies. I will correct that.
No
We'll stick to
worries.
Daniel. Welcome. A couple words about Daniel. I mean, we met through Curtis, of course, who over the last couple months, but I've gotten to know Daniel a little bit better over those 2 months, and we've been working together as well. And I've gone through his beautiful test, and which some of you I think have also done, and there's a blood work component to it as well. And I was just amazed at the results that came out of that and the insight, and then of course then having a call with the team afterwards to really jump into some changes that what I would describe are accessible to all of us, right? Like it's really easy, especially in this longevity space, to get wrapped up into really expensive testing, practices like hyperbaric chamber, like all of these different things that aren't always, kind of at a finger's grasp. Whereas this work, I mean, it's literally in our kitchen. Um, and we have a lot of, I think, autonomy and are empowered to be able to make some pretty meaningful change quite quickly. So with that, I mean, hopefully it's a bit of a teaser, but Daniel, welcome. Thank you for gracing us with some of your wisdom and expertise and so forth. And if you wouldn't mind, just give us a couple lines on who you are and why you do this work.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks a lot for the invitation and for being able to share this area of health and wellness that's sort of been my life's work for the last 15 years. So I'm a physician by training, board certified in aerospace medicine, and I spent 20 years as an officer and physician in the U.S. Army, which served really as the birthplace for what we call today the BrainSpan test kit that I'm going to talk a little bit more about. And I'll talk a little bit more about more specifically, like how did that genesis, how did those ideas serve as the genesis for the test kit in the military? And but retired from that after 20 years, about 4 years ago now, and decided to make it my life's work to spread the news of sort of what we uncovered at the sort of at the benefit of the Army work and the Army research and the soldiers that volunteered for that study, and do the right thing, which was share the benefits with everyone. I just felt like that was imperative to do. After all, we wouldn't have been able to do the research without, the tax-paying citizens of the United States. So, and I was very grateful to serve in that capacity. And so, yeah, so I'm very interested in everything that you guys are doing, and I think it's very synergistic. And I think you're going to find that today, as we go through sort of what we do at BrainSpan and why is it so important.
Yeah, so why don't you share how, because
Yeah.
there's so many different, I mean, there, like, how do you even pick an area to study or go deep on? There's so many different facets to, the mind. And I mean, of course, you've got a big focus on like fatty acids, omegas, and then of course cognitive testing and so forth. And I'm just curious how that came up, and then maybe give us a bit of a descriptive or description around like why we should care about some of these factors.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great segue. So, first of all, good morning to everyone. Thanks for making the time to be here. Um, I've got some nuggets to share with you that I think can be a transformative, can kind of transform your understanding or the way that you look at longevity. And the great thing is you already care deeply about living longer and health and wellness, which is, makes my job a lot easier. But I hope to really, and maybe many of you already understand something else that's important, even if we don't always say it out loud, that true longevity isn't just about like adding more grains of sand to the hourglass. It's really about making sure that those grains represent quality time. And I love what Curtis often says, which is about making sure, your joy span keeps pace with your lifespan. And that is really the gap that we have today, and one of the big motivating factors behind what we do. And so I want to kind of go into that a little bit more in depth, because when we talk about joy and meaning as we age, we have to be honest about what makes those years worth living in the first place, right? Things like our talents, our personality, our memories, really the essence of who we are, because longevity only matters if we're still there, right, to experience it. We often think of cognitive decline, which can lead into cognitive impairment and eventually dementia, as a threat to our abilities or our independence, our sort of day-to-day abilities to take care of ourselves, to drive ourselves to the store. But I think far more troubling really is this, that cognitive decline doesn't just take away what we can do, but it really slowly erodes who we are, our identity, our personality, and really what we mean to the people, who love us. So right now, as I kind of go into this in a little bit more detail, and of course, Mark, stop me if you got, if you want to dive into something in a little bit more detail or have a question. Otherwise, I'll be sure to leave plenty of time at the end for questions. So I really want people to think about that. Think about the people that you love and the people who love you. And maybe that's your spouse, your children, your grandchildren, the people who look to you for wisdom, for steadiness, guidance, and compassion, and the people whose lives are richer simply because you're there, you're present. Those people don't just want you living longer. They don't just want you to be independent. Yes, they want those things, but they also want you. They want your presence, your clarity, your humor, your personality, your heart. They want you there fully engaged and fully yourself. And so that brings us, I think, to a simple but very important fundamental truth. And think of it kind of this way. You have five, vital organs that keep you alive, but only one of them shapes your experience of life itself, right? Only one of them determines, how you love, who you love, how you connect with others, how you make decisions, even decisions involving, longevity itself. And really how you show up for the people who matter the most in your life. And of course, that organ is the brain, right? And if your brain is strong and resilient, you remain yourself. But when the brain begins to decline, the real problem isn't, misplacing your phone, or waking up in the morning not knowing where your keys or your phone are, forgetting the name of somebody that you've known for years. But while that's true, while that does and can happen, what really begins to change with that is, and it's often even more subtle, you barely notice it yourself, but is your personality. It's a slow erosion of the traits that shape how you relate, how you respond, and sort of like how you show up every day in life. And that erosion, it doesn't stay contained, right? I mean, we're part of a network, and it quietly can spread into those parts of life that are really important for creating that joy that Curtis and Mark so eloquently and importantly mentioned. And that erosion of that joy and that meaning, starts to affect relationships, your ability to be present, your sense of purpose, even the legacy that many of you have spent decades building. A lot of people with cognitive impairment will actually have depression as one of the first signs, and sort of cynicism and sort of disconnection. And sometimes it just can start off as a feeling of just kind of being a little off. That's a common term that I hear people use, not quite themselves anymore, foggy. And this is, long before anything would ever be diagnosed by a traditional clinician, even a traditional clinician like myself, which is why I'm here today, because this is the problem. They don't show up. This doesn't become something you're aware of until it's far beyond that, and then it's just simply too late. So this is the narrow view of longevity we have to be really careful to avoid. And I want you guys to be careful to avoid. I know your leadership, is careful, but we need to always keep this in mind because, even in groups like this, highly educated, highly driven, focused, you're invested in this, you wouldn't be here. We can really drift into a mindset that's just focused on extending life without protecting the one that we've already built, right? And that's what needs defenses. We pursue interventions that, add years to our life. Absolutely, lifestyle changes. But it's very easy to overlook what actually makes those years worth living, right? Remaining fully ourselves for those people who depend on us. And here's the real, I think, uncomfortable truth in this is that this isn't a hypothetical risk that I'm talking about. It's already happening at epidemic rates. Cognitive decline and dementia are the fastest growing chronic illnesses in the Western world. And they're also appearing in earlier age groups than we've ever seen before. So this is a public health crisis. And again, it's not just affecting the individuals, but it really has a strong ripple effect throughout the entire families, emotionally, relationally, and financially. It's one of the most costly chronic illnesses because of the length of time and the care that's involved. So despite extraordinary, I think, advances in science, and things like, wellness programs, biohacking supplements, anti-aging, sophisticated testing. Many of you, hear about these all the time and you discuss them. But nothing to date has actually meaningfully slowed the trend of this crisis. So while medicine tells us, we're making progress, in extending lifespan, and that's true quantitatively, the reality is that we're really just failing to protect our brain span. And without brain span, the kind of longevity that Curtis talks about, one that's marked by joy, meaning, being present, that just simply becomes harder and harder to reach.
Mhm. Well, and I think too, Daniel, just just
No.
in general as well, like, and the people here obviously are I would say they're of course motivated and they're stepping off the autopilot of regular society because we all know that people aren't doing well out there, and some of us probably fall in some of those stats as well. But then you leave a session like this, and then you're back in kind of the rat race, and I feel like that's where if your mind is struggling, it's really easy to fall back onto that autopilot, right? And then it becomes like forget about longevity. It's everything. You're spiraling.
Mm-hmm.
And so to your point around defense mechanisms, I think that's why we're here, and that's why I love your work as well. Is just and I want to get into it because it's just conscious of time. Like I think we definitely all can appreciate there's a problem. It touches all of us, and it's like, what do we do? Or what's one of the things we do? And like I said earlier, I just love how accessible what you're doing out in this to try to help this challenge is for all of us essentially. So I guess
Mm-hmm.
like how did you
Yeah.
get to
So what are the
yeah, like how did you get to what you're actually studying when people do the blood work for BrainSpan and like even
right?
feel free to use examples you're using with me as well, like as someone who is actually pretty conscious and aware and eats clean at home. I'm like, whoa, my omegas are off. Like there's work to be done.
Right. So basically, as what we have to realize that is like complex and extraordinary, the brain is. It's to date the most complicated structure in the known universe. It's still a biological organ. And what we realized, starting our work in the Army, was that just like any other organ in the body, it can be measured, it can be strengthened, it can be protected. But if we choose to sort of treat it that way, and protecting our brain's health, shouldn't be about guessing or hoping, which is what it is, as you sort of alluded to. It's really about understanding sort of what's happening beneath the surface, and objectively measuring that and tracking it, and then acting early enough to be able to make a difference. And so that's where the sort of critical gap is. We track almost everything about our bodies: movement, sleep, stress, heart rate, weight. We have all these dashboards, but if I ask people on this call, like, hey, how's your brain doing? How does it feel today? And not just how are you feeling, but how is your brain actually? What's your brain health like? Um, most people, even the people I meet, each and every day that most disciplined and health focused, pretty much have to say, I think it's okay. I'm not really sure, but I think I'm okay. And that is the blind spot that we have to sort of address, and what we realized we had to address starting with our soldiers, is that we can't leave this area unmeasured, untracked. We need
Hmm.
a roadmap, and data should be informing our decisions, just like it does in any area of our health and wellness. Um, and so it needs to be evidence-based, scientifically valid, of course, FDA approved. But then it needs to be able to build a roadmap, take that data and then build a very clear, simple roadmap of understanding and insight into the brain.
Mm.
Um,
And-
so,
and
it's kind
so
of like,
why fatty acids? And how did that like why should we care about our fats and these micronutrients? Like again, that's kind of what's really stood out. That it doesn't feel overwhelming to focus all there's because there's a million different things. It's like, no, I'm going to put some attention here. I guess that's my question is how did you arrive to that?
yeah. Okay, so so basically, to address that gap in the Army, um, we had the benefit of large budgets and the ability to pull together experts from around the world from a multiple disciplines of research and study, and we did that back in 2010 and had a conference at the NIH that was a DoD conference called Nutritional Armor for the Warfighter. And I think last I checked, like 5 years ago, you could still, there was some videos that somebody made there. I'm not sure if they got it approved, but posted some of the talks there. And although the video is poor quality, it's phenomenal information. And that's sort of what birthed the concept of, looking at these areas of fatty acids. We sort of had to like turn to sort of a body of science that the military itself had never really fully integrated into its like readiness definitions. We had to look at brain performance, aging, resilience, cognitive testing, and then really what are the nutritional like foundations of brain health, and then are those a problem? Is there a reason to worry about that? And based on about 300 different peer-reviewed studies, much of them were authored by the people at that conference, we were able to sort of identify the most like, sort of reliable approach to measure both how the brain works, but also is it structurally supported. That means basically a functional assessment and blood work assessments that's looking at specific nutritional factors. And that sort of shaped an entirely new way of thinking about brain health. And it's sort of like looking at it as a sort of mysterious, complex, poorly understood organ. We were able to like, and while that's true in many ways, we could still take this approach of fitness, of resilience that we knew the scientific foundations were well studied, and then adapt it to a test. And combining sort of these measurable biological factors like omega-3, your DHA level, your trans fat, your palmitic acid, and then also combine that with these very reliable measures of cognitive performance that is simple enough to do at home on a touchscreen, on your phone, basically. We could just really gain a clear, actionable, sort of a scalable model. And I think you said that at the beginning so well, right? It's like we didn't want this to be some high-end, super expensive thing that, I mean, it couldn't be that in the military because it had to be scalable, had to be able to work in combat, places like, Iraq, which is where we did the initial test in the middle of, nowhere, and still be able to get the person information, even if we had to mail the sample itself into the lab. So low cost, scalable were really important points. And I think that was awesome because that made it then something that was like a no-brainer, need to be sort of like put into use for the general public who, again, made that research possible. And I really believe that. So those two things,
Okay.
biology and function, that really is what the foundation for resilience, much like it is, a bridge, right? Like a bridge is built with resilience and sort of the two areas. It's the material that it's made out of, the paint that they use to help prevent it from corroding, but also the way the bridge can move and sway with vibrations and distribute loads and winds. So we don't get something like the Galloping Gertie, if you ever seen that video up in Tacoma Narrows Bridge. So there's this functional aspect and a structural, and it's really no different with the brain.
Okay.
So
There's a bunch of questions that are starting to come in here. So I have one more question before we start getting into this, just so we can kind of ground the conversation. But just what are some real simple or practical
you want to just jump right to the answers.
use? Well, just we don't have that much time, unfortunately. So it's like, what are some of what are some of the practical examples you've seen by making some tweaks on what's possible, I guess you can say it, and we can get into some of these. Yeah.
Right. So I think there's we do have to understand one thing before we talk about those, which is a very relatively new but a phenomenally important concept and discovery, in neuroscience in recent years, which is something called neuroplasticity. And that's the
Mhm.
brain's amazing ability, even as adults, to sort of adapt, reorganize itself, renew itself. And before, like even like late 90s, most of us were taught prior to the 90s that, you were, as an adult, you have the brain you have, and you can't replace the neurons, which are the cells in the brain. As you lose them, you can that period is over. But that's we realized was all false. That we can generate new neurons, but building new neurons, which is an important part of this neuroplastic potential um, that we want to leverage and we should leverage, requires sort of the right ingredients, the right substrates, the right raw materials. So so that takes us then into, well, what are, the right raw materials? And they're really not that much different, um, really at all, when we look at neurodevelopment in children, right? And this is one of the reasons that we're seeing so many behavioral disorders at earlier ages, and also just a significantly a higher prevalence of learning disorders, ADHD, than we did in prior years. I mean, more kids are on stimulants today than
Bluesville.
um, 20 years ago, and that's largely due to this problem of the right substrates. The brain over tens of thousands of years, the human brain was able to do, basically conquer the known world through um, being able to be the size and have the architecture that it had, but that required humans eating diets that supported that. And the problem is, we actually, as many advances as we've made, we've actually like gone the exact opposite direction with regards to those fatty acids in the last, I'd say, probably about 60, 70 years since we started focusing on heart disease. That sort of started to shift away from the right fats and more into don't eat fat. If fat's bad, fat causes heart disease, and eating carbohydrates and eating more carbohydrates, less fats. And that just made the problem worse, because now you've also got this high glycemic load that just is like adding gasoline on the fire. So that's, when it comes to those things. So now, if we want to get into sort of some of the specifics, as far as I can even give you know examples of individuals that have come in. Like, we had a 60-year-old female recently came in and had that sort of like, I'm just not feeling quite myself. I'm a little foggy. I'm a little off. And she did a BrainSpan test, and her test results were not like, oh, crisis mode, like in the gutter, but they weren't optimal. And when she optimized them, it's just amazing the difference. Yes, you see the numbers change, and you're in now, because that's the other problem. This isn't about normal or abnormal or disease or no disease. It's about optimal building resilience or not optimal building, less than optimal or poor. And so once she optimized the ingredients for building a healthy, resilient, strong brain, it was something she felt, right? And that is amazing, and it doesn't happen like on day one, but it was happening by week two. And at 90 days, the fog had lifted. It was like she said, it's like putting on glass. I never forget. She says it's like putting on glasses for the first time. You don't know you've got myopia, or And if you were a kid, I remember getting glasses. I was like, oh my gosh, everything is just so crisp and clear. And it was
Yeah.
the same thing for her when it came to thinking.
Well, someone in the chat is talking about hearing that even depression sometimes is described as feeling like a jet lag
Yeah,
in a way, which seems, similar in what you're describing here. And it's easy for that to become kind of your new normal until it's not, right? And then you're like,
yeah,
wow, there's a whole other world of possibility here.
that's exactly right. And then, the other part of this, so, and the tragic thing is the averages on these, and again, even within super health focused people, because nobody's measuring these things. Like, I mean, very few people. I mean, they'll know things like their fasting insulin level before they know their omega-3 index, which is completely tragic, right? Like the omega-3 index is it's like a vital sign for brain health, right? Your DHA level, we know people who have an optimal DHA level have a 60% reduced rate of developing dementia. And that was done in the Framingham group and published study. And it's like, again, doesn't make sort of mainstream medicine news, but DHA is something we measure, and we measure it, and that cutoff that we use is actually the same for the risk of dementia, because DHA is what is needed. Like your brain is 60% fat. I don't know if you guys know that, but it's almost majority of it is fat, and that fat should be DHA, which is a specific omega-3. And nobody's measuring their DHA. I mean, you might get an omega, maybe some people know their omega-3 level, but you actually want to tease out also the DHA because that's been independently validated for a risk factor, right? So, it's crazy to me that this stuff goes ignored by so many people, but it's not complicated, it's not expensive, it's easy to do. You can do it with a finger stick. Like I said, that's how we had to develop it. You still got to mail it into our lab because it requires a specific kind of measurement called gas chromatography. We won't get into that, but we have to look at the actual cells in your blood. We get about 5 million red blood cells on an average blood spot. So we're getting basically a biopsy of your tissue, if you will, but the tissue is your red blood cells. And then we know that that's a really good surrogate marker for the levels in your brain. So when somebody has a low omega-3 index, which the average is like 4%, a little less than 4%, optimal is 9%, right? If I go to Japan and measure the average Japanese person, they're 9.2%. I do the same thing here in Los Angeles, it's 4.1 to 3.9, right? And they don't get depression, they don't get heart disease, they have very low rates of dementia, So
Interesting.
yeah, so it's tragically simple,
Yeah.
but and the other thing is with the function, right? It's like, so we have to have those right substrates, but think about how we track things, and by tracking, you're able to sort of build your personal sort of like database, right? Your data bank. And that's like there's no other area where that's more important than in brain function. Because if you build your own cognitive function brain data bank, which is the way that test works is it's normatively scored. So that means like it's comparing you to a very, very well validated group of healthy, normal people who are just like you in the age and gender when you take the test. So that gives it's like a VO2 max, right? Like if any of you have done that, it tells you your cardiorespiratory fitness compared to what we think is sort of like a healthy level, optimal level. And that's just exactly the same thing, And most doctors I talk to is like, well, what disease does it diagnose? And we're like, well, it diagnoses a disease of poor resilience, of low brain function compared to what we would expect. And it's like they don't get it, right? Probably the same people will have a little bit of trouble understanding, well, why would I, most doctors don't send their patients to get a VO2 max, although we all know on this call that a VO2 max is incredibly insightful into your fitness level. And the same thing is true of the cognitive test. And by tracking it and doing it, testing and retesting like we recommend it, you build your own trajectory of cognitive function as you age. And again, it's adjusting for what it should be for your age, because there is, a normal amount of cognitive decline that we expect. Although I would argue that it's, and we grade our tests in such a way that, what is average is not what we want people to be. It doesn't have to be average.
Yeah.
And if you're shooting for longevity, you need to square that curve off so you don't, you maintain a higher function throughout that period of increased longevity.
So what do we do, Daniel? Like what are some good clean just we can probably assume that we're all roughly like until everyone goes through their actual tests themselves, just given the data you share, we're probably the average-ish, right? So which is low already, we know. So probably doesn't hurt to do some experimentation first, obviously do go through the testing, but then what are some good clean sources of good fats? Like just I
Yeah.
guess practically speaking of like how we're all living right now, what should be maybe on the top of our mind? And then there's I mean there's a ton of questions in here that are pretty detailed, but I think in general, like how do we actually, then have these conversations with our physicians and so forth.
Right.
Um, but
So
yeah,
yeah. So again, I don't want to I can't overemphasize the importance of measuring, right? Because uh, if I talk about like just what do you do, the problem is even in the supplement space, there's so much garbage that somebody could get the wrong idea and take supplements, that have DHA, and we see this over and over again. Like, 75% of the supplements on average, in my experience, don't have what the bottle says. Uh, and combine that with even if it does, and the 25% that do, people aren't taking the right amount. They're not taking enough, and so it's impossible to know, how
yeah.
much and what to take. So,
Well,
so
just
we,
for context, where I'm coming from, like the advice you gave me as an example, I think was
yeah.
very practical. Is
So, so
is
if
like your
you're not going
proteins,
to
right?
measure, what's that?
I'm thinking like less about the supplements because I agree. I mean that you've got to have the detail there. But I'm thinking what you mentioned to me around like, oh, well, I see this often enough that maybe the source of your protein is messing with some of like that's something I think in general, even if you don't know
Right.
your level, we should be thinking about that would be helpful for everyone here.
Yeah. So people should be thinking about, um, first of all, avoiding seed oils. Seed oils are in everything. And so this is not easy. Although it becomes a lot easier once you realize sort of the scam that's played on you and on these products. And I really mean that because it's just everywhere. Everything is made with corn oil, soybean oil, even you go to Whole Foods, right? And so you want to really read the label and avoid buying products that have seed oil. It's just not necessary. Um, and you want to look if you're, so you want to get eliminate, reduce the amount of seed oil. Now, as you alluded to, Mark, one of the big areas, and we've tested, 40,000 people at this point, and some of these people, one of them, I don't think he'd mind me telling you, is a CEO and founder of Lifetime Fitness, and um, you know, doing amazing things in his lifestyle and eating right. But what happens with the people are a lot of times avoiding the seed oils. They've gotten pretty good at that, and they're eating high protein, low carbs, but they don't understand the difference between like pasture raised, grass fed, and so many of the meats, eggs, poultry, the animals are fed seed oil, or they've got diets. Even if they say pasture, raised or grass fed, a lot of times, in his case, I had him drive by the place where he buys his meat, and they've got a feeding trough in the center of the
Yeah.
pasture, right, where they're eating, sort of, this corn meal filled with soybean, because that fattens up the animals and it's cheap feed. But now you're just getting the seed oils sort of indirectly through your meat sources. And this is like, he wasn't, I mean, by any means the only one. I mean, CrossFitters who are doing a high paleo diet, it's just really hard to know that your animal meats are coming from animals that are running around eating bugs and seeds and grass, and not, packaged foods themselves, packaged feed, right? But that's the way 95, 98% of our animal products, our animals that we eat,
Mm.
are fed, even our eggs. So you got to be careful. And again, we go through all this when somebody tests, and we kind of help them build a shopping list, and what are the key terms? What are the brands that you can trust? People that we've gotten to know, right? That the family-owned businesses that are producing the right kinds of eggs, the right kind of meats, and they're available anywhere. Um, And we don't have any financial interest in those, but we want people to make it easy for them to find those right products. And then, the other thing is like oil, then you want to increase your oily fish consumption. And a lot of people don't know what oily fish are. They just think fish is fish. Oh, I need to eat more fish. That's not true. You need to eat specific kinds of oily fish. You need to make sure it's not farm raised fish. And I don't care what
Mm.
they say. If you can avoid farm raised, it's better. Eat wild, especially when it comes to things like salmon and tuna, very oily fish. The mercury thing is a bogus. Don't believe it. It was all bogus. It led to huge amounts of autism and ADHD, learning disorders. When women stopped eating fish in pregnancy, it was tragic. And there was a meeting at the White House that I was involved in. And so they've reversed all that, but a lot of people still think, I got to worry about mercury toxicity. No, you don't. You got to worry about omega-3 deficiency. And so does your baby. So increasing that with the right oily fish, 3 to 4 servings, 5, 6 ounces, a week minimum. I mean, even the American Heart Association now has said that to reduce heart disease and stroke. Buying the right kinds of, I believe fish oil should be a daily requirement that is like in our water, if we could,
Mm.
because it reduced so many diseases and actually improves the way our mitochondria generate energy, improves the way that you feel full when you eat. You've got to have high levels of omega-3 in your cells and in your brain, and they're used for so many important hormonal processes. So and again, with that, we've got like 3 or 4 brands that we've tested and validated. And they're available online, but they're the minority. But they're the ones that actually contain the EPA and the DHA. You want to look for products that have at least 60% EPA and DHA by weight. I think you and I, Mark, talked about that.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah.
And most of them,
And
if you do the analysis of the facts label, and be careful because you got to look at the serving size, it'll most times say 2 soft gels. So now you got to divide all those numbers by 2. But look at how much of that soft gel is actually EPA and DHA. So if it doesn't say, run for the hills. If it says, make sure you look at the serving size and figure it out per capsule. And then look at your capsule size. And if it's not 60% at least or higher EPA, DHA, throw it in the garbage, because now you're just adding more corn oil, which is what they use as a filler oil in those soft gels. You're just adding to the problem. So you better off not taking
yeah,
any.
I think
So
Michael Silverman, I think that's addressing your question here, right? Um, what's effective, what's ineffective. I'm just being conscious. We've got maybe 5 more minutes. Hans, please address vegan health practices. That's a great question as well. So we've talked a lot about animal protein and so forth. Any thoughts on vegan health practices, Daniel?
yeah, lots of views on that. I'll just say that what the data shows is that so if you're a strict vegan, you rely on, mammals can take an omega-6 that's called ALA, which is found in things like flax seeds and walnuts. And by the way, we all should be eating more nuts. So eat more nuts, eat more blueberries, and eat oily fish. If you don't remember anything, remember that. But if you're a vegetarian, you're relying strictly on the conversion of an omega-6 called ALA, which again is healthy. It's got, there's some health benefits to eating a diet rich in ALA, flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts, some green leafy vegetables. But where the real benefit comes from is mammals can convert ALA into EPA and DHA. So a vegetarian who's not eating fish or taking a fish oil supplement, and by the way, they now make vegetarian fish oil supplements because it actually originates in algae. So if you're a vegetarian, there are high quality vegetarian sources of omega-3. But if you're not doing that and you're talking about your diet, you're relying on the conversion of ALA. And the problem is that genetically now humans across the globe have a very low conversion rate. About 1% of the ALA that you consume can be converted by the enzymes that your cells have into EPA and DHA. And this is kind of why the ADA doesn't, in the United States, doesn't have a DRI, a daily recommended intake amount of EPA and DHA, right? Some countries actually do. Canada does, Europe does, but we don't in the US. And that's probably not good because, they're saying, well, you can convert omega-6s. So we'll just say, eat essential fats. Essential fats are omega-3s and omega-6s. The problem is if you're a vegetarian, you're going to get very low levels of EPA and DHA. So, most vegetarians cannot get to a 9% omega-3 index without a vegetarian supplement. They can get, if they're eating really clean, low other omega-6s, because that'll tie up that enzyme, they will get some conversion. Maybe I've seen it as high as 5% of their total intake. That means you got to be taking, you need to be taking on average 2 to 3 grams of EPA DHA a day, of pure EPA DHA. You got to be eating, 5 times that of chia seeds, So, yeah.
Okay. Last question for, I mean, we can continue probably for hours, but there are a lot of questions about brands and recommendations and so forth. Is there a place that you can point us, or could we
Well,
maybe email the group afterwards, or what's the best? I know you gave me a list kind of via text, but where can we get that?
yeah. So the best thing is to do the full blood work, right? And with
Yep.
that, you're going to get one-on-one coaching that
Mm.
just comes with the test. And so you'll get just straight recommendations, but then also here's what to look for when you're shopping in the grocery store and things to avoid. So, all that comes, but again, if you don't know the number, you're not going to know how much to take. And so what we do
Yeah.
is calculate how much of that good brand that you need to take. And that's based on your levels. So we provide 3 to 4, really well-trusted brands.
Okay.
But you got to know the number, otherwise it doesn't do any good.
Yeah, yeah, of
Um,
course.
and we do have a special. So go to brainspan.com /longevity, and there's no coupon code needed. We took 40% off our test packs, which is a baseline and a retest. It includes both. So you take a baseline, and 90 to 120 days later, you take a retest. And we recommend doing that, 3 times a year. But you get both of those for 40% off, and that includes a coaching session. So
No, thank
take
you.
advantage of that. I think it's the biggest discount we've ever had. Get one for you and your spouse, because it's better to do it with somebody, especially if that person's involved, with sharing meals with you, and it can help you stay accountable. And we'll go through in more detail. Vitamin D levels, we're going to measure that on the test. And that's a big one where, I think Mark, maybe it was you, it might have been somebody else, but people are taking vitamin D, but they're either not taking enough or they're taking too much. And vitamin D can actually be toxic at high doses because it's fat soluble. So, the biggest problem though is people aren't, they're consuming enough on paper, but it's not being absorbed. So you need to take something else with it, like vitamin K2. And so I don't want to get too into the weeds, but things work together. And that's because these things affect the health of your gut as well. And that's a whole gut brain axis discussion that we could spend another 3 hours talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's why, you don't want to be, ignorance is not bliss in this regard. Get your data, get your measurements, and get a roadmap, and don't be taken advantage of, which unfortunately is sort of the norm in both the grocery stores and the supplement aisle.
Yeah. Daniel, thank you. And yeah, I can't emphasize is more than you, I should say, around just the testing, the value in the testing. Because even for me personally, I was kind of like, oh wow, I mean, my vitamin D is lower than what I expected, and of course the omegas. And when you have good data, then you can work from a baseline, right?
Yeah,
So
and we will be sending, as we get a data, those of you who did the cognitive online portion, we will be sending you your results so you get those. That was included. We just wanted to wait through the today because people were registering last minute, and so we'll send those all out together. And if you do the test kit with the blood work, we'll pair those together. So you won't need to do the cognitive test again if you don't want to.
Mm.
Yeah, so if you took that, you will get that information as far as where do you stand compared. And we're just going to send you the raw data because the report is only generated. It doesn't generate without the blood work, but you'll still get all your scores, and you'll get that by email today. So, and I'm being told that the special is good through Sunday. So.
Okay,
Don't
thank you.
call us on Monday and say, "Hey, I want the special." It's
Yeah,
gone.
yeah, I get it now for sure. Thank you. Thank you so much for
Cyber
your
Monday.
time. Thank you for what you do, your support with our community over here. It's deeply, deeply appreciated.
No, thank you for having me, and it's great to be with people that are passionate about doing these things that are so important. And I hope that if nothing else, like there's an area that you're going to be less, you don't, you're going to we want to remove that area of vulnerability in something that's really your most vital asset that you have.
Yeah.
So
So it's really a win-win for everyone. I mean, thriving minds, I can't see a downside to that, right?
exactly.
So thank you.
Thank you guys
Amazing.
for having me. Appreciate it. Yeah. Any questions at all, feel free to reach out. Dan at brainspan.com is my email. Curtis or Mark knows how to get a hold of me. Happy to answer if you had a question that we didn't get to.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. And you're, of course, Daniel, you're welcome to stick around if you want to
Yeah.
do the exercise, but you can hop off as well. You've seen this one before as well. So, well, Curtis, do you want to say a couple? You always set this up really well for why we do this flow and this exercise. And you've got a couple of really good examples. I think that put it all into context.
For sure. Thank you. And Daniel, you're just such a prince and a great resource to our community. So I hope everybody takes advantage of the cognitive scan offer for sure. Yeah, when I went to this longevity conference a couple of years ago, they basically said that, if you can just live 10 more years, so many things that can kill us today, they're going to have figured out. And I was just blown away by all these, 400 longevity gurus just talking about all the incredible breakthroughs that are happening seemingly every day that are going to literally allow us to live, potentially, an extra 22 years, not just of lifespan, but health span and joy span. And the exercise that we're about to do is really just giving us, a vision for what's possible and providing that why. Why would you want to have these extra years? And it's not about just, living longer quantitatively, it's qualitatively. And so that's really the vision behind our longevity forums. And again, if anyone would like to learn more about the longevity forum, please take advantage of the scheduling link to get on a call with Brian, because we're launching new forums in January, and we'd love for you to be part of that. But from my perspective, I don't want to be in a wheelchair drooling all over myself. I want to be surrounded by people who share similar values, such that we're learning together, growing together, making the world together a better place together. That's what it's all about from my perspective. So thank you, Mark. Please
Yeah.
continue.
Thank you. No, it's that's super helpful to get your perspective in that story. And it's again, I'm always amazed at how just a few questions, in with an intentional group, how that can really change our perspective around our longevity. So what I'll do is this is a bit of this is solo. We'll come together as a group in a few minutes, or come back together as a group in a few minutes. They're just 2 minutes per question. I'll throw in some binaural beats just in the background to help our minds get into that flow. And the idea is that there's a few questions here. You're going to spend some time. What's probably going to happen is you're going to answer the question really quickly, and then you're going to say, I've got nothing else, which is not true. Your mind's got a ton of other things to say. So just ask, and what else? And we'll just keep going and just push the mind a little bit for that set time period. And you'll be amazed at what comes out the other side. So I will set the timer now. And the question is, what's your number? Right? Like what's your target number, and what's the age you want to live to thriving, clear-minded, and mobile? as Curtis said, I mean, I don't think we want to be drooling and rolling around in a wheelchair. And why does that number feel right to you? And then we'll go even deeper in a minute. So let me just throw this on. There we go. All right, last 20 seconds. You can really think, what does thriving mean to you? All right. So the next is, so I'm just trying to get this timer to stop. The next question is the big one in my opinion. You know, when you think of adding additional years, if you add another 22 years and stretch that horizon to whatever your original number was, what would that look like, and how would you show up differently in the big areas of life, right? Family, work, legacy, impact, as you said, Dan, you know, skiing with my grandkids and sharp as a tack. I mean, stuff like that, and just keep going and keep going deeper on what those additional years would mean, and what would that kind of impact that would have in your big life buckets. Last 30. All right. And then what's holding you back? Right? Name that core challenge. Is there a key health habit you need to let go of, you need to adjust, need to reshape? And this is a big one for me. If you don't address this, what will it cost you in family, work, legacy, and impact? And I'll give us a minute to answer that one. As the chat is lit up, I want to get this group share going properly. But really think, yeah, if you don't address it, what's the cost of that? And last one, think of yourself at that desired age. This is a fun one. So you're clear, you're motivated, things are going well. What counsel would that future you give you today sitting here? Like project forward to whatever it is, 120, whatever that age you picked. What's the counsel they give to you today? And keep asking, what else? You've got a lot of counsel to give. We've got a lot of wisdom in that noggin of ours. All right, feel free to unmute. I mean, we've got a lot coming out of the chat. I mean, and just share that, just share some of that advice that popped up in that last question. You know, what your future self would tell you today, because I imagine, you know, many of you, whatever came up for you individually would be helpful for this group as well. I can start here. Robin, why don't you kick us off? You're rocking the chat in here. Where is Robin? I can't see
Okay, here I
Robin.
am. Sorry. I'm so sorry. My camera will not turn on.
Okay, it's all
I had a
good.
purple haze over it and now it's completely gone. So I apologize. But first of all, thank you, Curtis and Mark, for a great talk today, and Dr. Johnston. Yeah, I would just say start today. I mean, I was at Mass last weekend, and our Monsignor talked about how we always talk about tomorrow, and he's very Italian, and he said in Italian, tomorrow doesn't mean the next day. It could mean 10 years from now. It could mean a generation from now. It doesn't mean actually the next day. But he said we always talk about doing something tomorrow, and he said don't do anything tomorrow. Do it today. Start today. And I started doing that just last week. And I thought, well, that's a big epiphany. And we always
Yeah.
hear about it, but just trying to put it into practical application. So just making those small changes and incrementally over time is where the change happens.
Well said. Well said. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Just one thought I felt like called to share this.
Yeah.
If there's somebody on this group this size, there's probably somebody that's really struggling with their sleep and don't know, you know, they're not getting regular sleep and not sure how important that is. And I just want to emphasize that, like, sleep is the equivalent of going to the gym for your body. It's the equivalent of going to the gym for your brain. So prioritize sleep, prioritize a schedule, and seek, you know, assistance, even if that's medical assistance, to get your sleep on track, because it's one of the most important things we do every single day, besides eating, that drives neuroplasticity.
Thank you.
If I could just chime in, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, thanks for doing this, Curtis. It's wonderful. I'm good friends with Chad Hespel, who is the reason I'm connected. And I brought this up in the last call. You know, I think this idea of Chip Conley and modern elders and what he's doing with trying to give everybody a new view of, you know, aging. It hits home. Personally, I have a father who is 94, at age 88, in Washington. He's a nuclear engineer. He decided, just given the Trump administration's view on nuclear energy, it didn't make sense to continue working. But his mentor worked into his 90s. He's so active and very, you know, I don't want to jinx it, but I throw this out there as he is, to me, a hero of what you can be doing. And he also had kids much later, and I did as well. So I think for you all, the woman who just said, you know, start today, are there people in your life who are a bit older who could benefit from you being nice to them and engaging them, because loneliness for that age is such an, it's as bad as the sleep issue that was just mentioned. And my father's lucky enough to have a 15-year younger wife, my mother, so that keeps him going. But I mean, his trainer is like, he could put some 40-year-olds to shame. So all the things, like, but mostly I think just trying to think about other models in your life of people that might benefit from you helping them to age in a more appropriate way, given what we just chatted. So thanks.
Thanks, Maya. Thank you. Maybe one more. Yeah, go for it. I'm seeing some
Um,
hands. Yeah, yeah.
Hi, yeah.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Anshul Bhatia. I'm the founder of Sydenham Clinic. I'm so happy to be part of this group, and I'm excited about Curtis's longevity forums. Um, I love this morning. I love this morning. I think we, we all coming together, and it's making us think and reflect. I love it. It's a Friday morning, but I think what we're doing here in this group is something so powerful because saying it aloud will hold us accountable. And sometimes we have these dreams and you don't have permission to talk like this. How dare you think you're going to live so long? So thank you for
Yeah.
giving us permission to think and dream.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for being here and for what you do. I mean, this is how it all came together. I mean, it's kind of a perfect segue because there's no shortage of services and testing and so forth and uh practices that you can do. What we've noticed is the community aspect is where we're missing a lot of that aspect, and we're trying to, of course, bring in all the advantages that we have in modern day, which is wonderful, but also not forget that we're all human beings and have regular lives and struggles and so forth, and just us being here, at least doesn't feel like we're alone, because when we step out of this, we're kind of the ones that seem kind of weird, to the general population, which hopefully shifts more and more, but we're definitely not the majority, I would say, right? And obviously that's showing up in the data that Daniel's seen and we're all seeing. So uh, I reflect that back. Thanks to all of you for being here.